It's almost impossible to fully grasp the scope of a single life. How many people can be affected, or helped, or hurt by that one person? What could they have changed? What could they become? All questions that ring hollow when spoken over a shallow grave. Vash the Stampede values human life, love, and peace more than anything else in this world. And just about the only way to get him angry is to kill someone to end a story right in front of him. So he wanders the world, putting his ideals to the test. But as good as his intentions are, trouble hounds him everywhere he goes. Vash quickly learns that upholding these ideals won't always be easy. Partially because he's kind of an idiot.
Alright, Ace, I want to know. What's your real reason for being here? Well, now that was an odd response.
But he's my idiot. Hey, I'm Mark, how you doing? Trigun is a show I'm sure a lot of you are already familiar with. With its late-night Saturday time slot back in the day, it caused me almost as much insomnia as every other show I wasn't supposed to watch around that time on Adult Swim. The original Trigun manga started publication in 1995 and was created by Yasuhiro Nightow. The anime aired in Japan in 1998, and the US got it 5 years later in 2003 with an English dub. That seems like a dramatic gap nowadays, but this was pretty status quo in the dark ages of Western otakudom. Simulcasts were but a distant dream, and if you wanted to watch something subbed, fan translations were often your only option. It truly was a horrible time to be alive. But a life is still a terrible thing to waste, and that ideal is what defines Trigun's core conflicts and themes. On the surface, it looks like a comedic action adventure with a sci-fi western twist. And while it is pretty damn funny and has plenty of coolness factor, the thing I remember most about this show is how emotional, thoughtful, and contemplative it is. It can make me laugh, cry, and reflect in the span of a single 20-minute episode. And while it might show its age in terms of production value, the dramatic storytelling of Trigun is truly timeless, and it's definitely still worth watching today. One of my favorite aspects of the show is how it handles its world building. There's close to no exposition whatsoever. Very little of the futuristic technology is directly explained, and there's no narrator to speak of. Instead, the show lets the characters and the setting speak for itself. Every time someone does discuss lore and technology, it's very brief and usually part of an organic conversation. It's never something that's there for the benefit of the audience. There's no lore dumps to shatter the pacing or kill the mood. This approach has fueled fan theories and discourse for 2 decades, but it never feels like you're missing the critical parts of the plot, which is very well understood. I was never confused or scratching my head at the tech, and when I was presented with something mysterious that I didn't understand, the show gives enough context clues to intuit what's going on, or at least figure it out on a subsequent playthrough. Wow, I just said fucking playthrough. Can you tell that I normally review games? This approach makes the story very engaging and definitely worth a second watch. There are certain scenes that are way more emotional once you understand Vash's full backstory, but on the first viewing, it's hard to not get wrapped up in the intrigue and mystery it builds around the lovable broomhead and the world he wanders. There's something so striking about the plants that are used to power the cities. These machines that sustain life on this desert planet cast a long shadow over the people they protect, and almost no one knows how to fix them. Thus, repairmen charge one hell of a premium. Thus, if a town is poor and people can't relocate, they're kinda fucked. I haven't seen such a fucked up capitalist society since I last looked outside my window. Power structures are loose and chaotic in Trigun, embodying the lawless frontier typical of the Western genre. Most towns have a sheriff, but they tend to be either incompetent or irrelevant, at least when compared to our gun-happy heroes. It feels like every line of dialogue was carefully thought out, and every conversation in the show feels very natural. On that note, let's talk about some of these amazing characters. Before we get into Vash himself, Meryl and Millie form one of the best comedy duos in classic anime. Meryl is basically a dangerously competent and dangerously overworked salary woman who's just here for adventure because it's her job as an insurance agent. She is constantly on the verge of losing her shit, particularly when in close proximity to Vash and his fanbase.
I thought we were gonna get you, Vash!
I guess I'm just lucky that these girls aren't too swift, if you know what I'm saying.
I understand how you feel, but this is not the answer. You have to try to calm down!
Meryl, please don't shoot the kids. Millie is the female version of a himbo. Shame we don't have a word for that. The main cast of recurring characters is very small, but that's kind of refreshing. Everyone who does keep showing up feels fleshed out, even if not every character is particularly dynamic or constantly changing. Nicholas D. Wolfwood is a badass priest with an extremely suspicious skill for gunplay. He's a fan favorite for a reason. Wolfwood is just as morally complex as Vash, and he clearly weighs his decisions very carefully, particularly when it comes to hurting people. But he also doesn't always seem to value his own safety much, putting himself in dangerous situations constantly. With just 3 characters, I've actually covered almost half the main cast, so the show definitely goes for quality over quantity. I'd say the lead stands out the most, though. Vash is really entertaining. I've never seen a character this in control look this helpless. The humor is a major selling point for Trigun. Comedy is as subjective as it gets, just ask my audience, but the show made me laugh on more than one occasion. Now I know what you're thinking. I always know what you're thinking. But you're probably thinking this show seems a lot sillier than my intro would imply, and that's because Trigun plays fast and loose with its tone. In the breadth of a single episode, it can be zany and carefree, but conclude on a painful, bittersweet note. More so than anything, Trigun is about the beauty and chaos of life and the tragedy of death. Vash doesn't just dislike killing, killing is antithetical to his entire identity. There's holes in his memory, and all he has left is his optimism and some unbelievable aim. So with those things, he does everything he can do to protect as many people as possible. That's normal for an anime hero, but what's not normal is, well, Vash fails on more than one occasion. I'm not getting into spoilers, but let's just say the world of Trigun is a harsh, chaotic place, and it's very unfair. Death can strike at a moment's notice. Throughout his journey, Vash meets plenty of good-hearted people fighting for what they believe in, and he meets plenty of corrupt people who make him question his own morality. Specifically the whole don't kill anyone thing. This is what lifts Trigun above the typical adventure story to become something more. As an adult with a greater understanding of violence and conflict than I had as a kid, Trigun hits different. Very different. As a kid, it was hard to wrap my head around such complex theming, but even putting aside the thought-provoking stuff that happens towards the end, it's the emotional through line of our hero that really impacted me the most. Seeing someone who stands up for love and peace in a world this fucked up, you might think they're naive, but Vash knows hardship, pain, loss, and emptiness better than most. That's what makes me care about the character and stay invested in the story. He knows the planet is in a wretched state, but that doesn't mean he's going to become wretched himself. Action in Trigun is a bit of a mixed bag. At key moments, the dynamic posing and fluid destruction really dazzles, and then you'll see a bunch of close-ups, still image shots, and other little animation cheats for the majority of dialogue or major action scenes. It's never offensively bad, there's always a good bit of animation in every episode, and the only times it goes off-model is to accentuate the comedy. But action in anime has come a long way since 1998. So don't expect it to hold up to a modern Bones or KyoAni production, you know? The storyboarding and framing is top-notch stuff for the time, though. As I've hopefully demonstrated through this video, there's a bittersweet beauty to the planet of Gunsmoke. Yes, that's really what the planet is called. Ruins and sweeping desert vistas convey the dusty, lonely, and desperate atmosphere really well. Even with its average animation budget, the show still pulls off some striking imagery pretty often. And then we have the soundtrack. Yeah, about that. In my last anime review on Dr. Stone, which you can check out at the end of this video if you haven't seen it yet, I got some copyright warnings, but no major consequences. Still, I'm only gonna play some small snippets this time, and hopefully YouTube won't eviscerate my hopes and dreams. Just kidding, YouTube always does that. But yeah, the OST is really good. Grungy guitars and playful percussion abounds, suiting the spaghetti western aesthetic the show is clearly going for. The music ranges from uplifting and soulful to spacey and atmospheric. The battle tracks convey a wild, hectic sound that enhances every action scene, and the emphasis on fast-paced rhythms inject a chaotic energy into these moments. But I'd be remiss if I neglected to mention one particular track. I won't spoil much about him, but there's a certain character who has an obsession with death to rival Vash's passion for life. Similar to Vash, he's far more powerful than most people around him, but he gets a sick thrill out of how deadly that power is. The only thing that gives his life meaning is the fact that he can hurt or kill others, and do so easily. And his theme song? Well, it's not even a song. It's more like the gates of hell being pried open with heavy machinery. Listen to this. The beginning of the track has this distant wailing sound. It could be wind, or it could be the muffled moans of unseen people suffering. And as the track slips into more strange, indescribable sounds, you feel the weight of this character's sheer, overwhelming malevolence. It's the perfect soundtrack for a person so cruel it defies human understanding. And yet that malice is a human trait. It's rare that a character gets so much out of their screen time, and I'll never forget the way my hair stood on end when I first heard this track as a kid. Trigun is simple on the surface, but it doesn't take long for it to subvert your expectations. It's a story about clinging to compassion in an uncaring world, and I definitely recommend checking it out. Vash the Stampede is a force of nature, and we're just along for the ride. I've really been enjoying reconnecting to my passions lately. Getting back into anime after so long has kind of been a godsend for my mental health, but more so than that, my community really pulled me out of the fire recently. My life has been really hard lately, and YouTube isn't exactly helping since I seem to be effectively blacklisted from a lot of people's inboxes, despite the fact that I'm making a lot more content than ever, and, you know, it's kind of better than ever too. This is mainly an issue on the other channel, but either way, that difficulty no longer feels hopeless or pointless because I know that what I do means a lot to people. A life is a terrible thing to waste, so I'm gonna keep on chasing my bliss. I love giving y'all stuff to look forward to and giving you a space to talk freely about your own thoughts on life and art. So, let me know if you enjoy these last two anime reviews, and let me know if there's anything I can do to improve them in any way. My best work is clearly ahead of me since I'm always getting better, and I'm always open to suggestions. I'm gonna keep living life and making progress every day, and I gotta thank y'all for the support on this journey. It's obviously gonna take some time for the new channel to grow, and EmceeProphIt is really floundering at this point, but I just don't care. I'm gonna focus mainly on shows and games that I would actually recommend because I don't know if you noticed, but this world could do with more love and peace! By which I mean I think it's more productive for me to focus on the positives in the current climate. There's enough negativity without me making the 100th video complaining about Sword Art Online, you know? If you want to help me on that journey, spreading my show on social media, Reddit, and forums is always super helpful. You can also check out my game review channel, EmceeProphIt, where I upload new vids every month, just like I plan on doing here. And if you want to support me in a more direct way, you could also pledge $1 or $2 to my Patreon. You'll get to see videos a day or two early, get access to a bit of unlisted content, And you can live with the knowledge that you're buying me pizza. And really, is there a higher calling? Didn't think so.